Hello, everyone, and welcome to Ex Libris's Linked Data Open Data Development Update and Question and Answer with Josh Weisman, sponsored by the IGeLU Linked Open Data Working Group. And without much further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Josh. After he's finished, I'll have just a few words about what the working group's been doing. And then we'll be available for question and answer. Note the shortened URL in the slide here, Google Slides C5ZE7F. That's where you can put your questions. Okay, so the chat may not work for you, but you can leave your questions at that link. Okay, over to you, Josh.
Okay, great. Thank you, Laura. Thanks, Mehmet. I'm happy to be here today. We have some exciting developments in the world of linked data in Alma and some updates in Primo as well. So it's a good time to do this. In the most recent releases, some things we've been working on for a while have come together. Some things we've tested with the community have come together. And so it's really a great time to share that with you. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can see it. Laura, remember, you just give me the thumbs up. You can see my screen?
You can. Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, so we'll give a few updates about collaboration. As I mentioned, some things we've been doing together with the community over the past couple of months. And then we will provide an update on linked data features in Alma. And that'll be where we'll spend most of the time today, including a live demo of some BIBFRAME and some other linked data support in Alma from the past couple of months. So that'll be exciting. A short update on linked data in Primo, and then we'll go back to Laura, who can share with us some special interest working group updates, and also we'll manage the Q&A. So as many of you know who have been to IGeLU or to ILUNA, we have updates there for the special interest, for the linked data special interest working group. And so some of the material that you'll see today comes from those updates, but of course we have updated that material with the latest information. And also today we can do a little bit more of an in-depth deep dive and show a demo too of some of those features as well, which is fun. So just a few notes on collaboration. Over the past couple months, Laura and I have been talking about what the best way is to streamline communication between Ex Libris and the community. And as you know, also there's been a special linked data collaboration that we've sponsored over the past 2 or 3 years, really in effect to get input from the community about what features, what linked data features we should develop in Alma when we were just getting started. And we're really happy to be at a position now where, especially now at the end of this year, linked data is a full-fledged feature in Alma. There are various elements of it. We'll see a lot of it today. So we feel that we've reached the point where we can move to a more standard model where the special interest working group on linked data will continue to work to advance linked data concerns and really represent the community, sharing linked data news and provide us, Ex Libris, feedback on our roadmap. So really looking to the special interest working group to kind of take on that role that the other special interest working groups, interoperability and analytics, serve, and that is being the focal point for that, for customers who are interested in that feature or that area, and serve as a funnel to kind of bring the user voice to us, so that we can try to take that into consideration as we build our roadmap. So it really is a point of maturity, we believe. And of course, you know, we're all working through this world of linked data together, and of course, the world itself is in its infancy, but we feel that the direction, at least for the initial features, have been successfully, or through your work and your pushing, we've successfully gotten out the initial feature set for linked data, and now want to move into a standard model where we can build out the roadmap together and get your input through the special interest working group. So to that end, at the end of this year, the 2016-17 Linked Data Collaboration Basecamp will become the Linked Open Data Specialist Working Group Basecamp. And that is because right now it's the feeling of the folks managing the Specialist Working Group, there's no better tool to kind of provide these conversations and discussions and feedback. And so we're willing to leave the Basecamp open. But really, kind of have it be the discussion forum for the Special Interest Working Group. And of course, if in the future a better tool is found, then we're happy to migrate to that.
Josh?
Yes.
Can you speak up a little bit? Because there are people who are finding it difficult to hear you.
Okay, I can try. Speaking directly into a microphone, so I was hoping that would help, but I can try to speak a little bit louder if that's better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then specifically around BIBFRAME, which is some of the features that I'll show today. So over the past couple months, we've been working with Harvard University and the Library of Congress on a collaboration to bring into Alma the Library of Congress Mark 21 to BIBFRAME 2 converter. And that has been released, and it's actually the engine behind the BIBFRAME features that we'll see today. And so that's really very exciting. And now that those BIBFRAME features have been released for general availability, we're taking additional feedback from the wider community in the Basecamp. And those of you who are on the Basecamp have seen that there was already a fruitful discussion there on some of these BIBFRAME features. So that is great to see. Okay, so those were general updates about collaboration with the community. And then Laura, as I said, we'll give some more special interest working group updates towards the end of the presentation. So we'll start off with the update of linked data features in Alma. I'll mention briefly the updated documentation, and then we'll go through some things you've seen before, perhaps, and I'm just putting in a greater context around the new features and trying to organize our thoughts around the features that are available. And then, of course, towards the end, we'll be talking about some BIBFRAME features which are newly released in the November and December releases. And then we'll talk a little bit about the roadmap, which hasn't changed much since our last update, but we can give you an update on what has been actually developed and released from that roadmap. So a note on updated documentation, as I'm sure most or all of you are aware, the developer network is the place for all things API integration related, and linked data is no exception. And so if you look under the Alma integrations section, we have reorganized the linked data section there, documentation, to bring it in line with some of these features that have been released over the past couple of months. And so there you can find documentation on the automatic enrichment, which is done for linked data URIs, and then separate sections on BIBFRAME features, on JSON LD, and on RDA, RDF features there. So you're welcome to go there. It's at developers.exlibrisgroup.com, Alma integrations linked data, and we'll make these slides available after the update, so you can have those links as well. So we're happy to have you take a look at the updated documentation. And of course, where there are links to how to configure, whether it's publishing profiles or integration profiles, then we link directly to the relevant sections of the online help. So that's the new updated documentation at the developer network. And so for those of you who have worked at all with linked data features, you know that Alma does automatic enrichment of URIs in MARC records and subfield 0. And we do that for known authorities mostly, is mostly where that comes from. And this enrichment is the basis for a lot of the linked data features that we'll see. And so I wanted to mention it or just remind you here. Of course, you can do manual cataloging of URIs within the metadata editor. You can import records that have subfield zeros. We'll be talking about features in the future that will allow you to perhaps search linked data sources, but for now, those URIs arrive either via automatic enrichment or via manual cataloging or importing from other systems. And then whether or not those URIs arrive via automatic or manual generation, they can be used by the downstream features, which we'll look at in a minute. So that's the automatic enrichment, and I bring that up because it sets the frame for when that automatic enrichment is performed and what features that enrichment is used in. So if you see here this table, we see that there are 3 different types of linked data output that we have various levels of support. Those are along the left, and along the top we have 3 different points where that data is exposed. So in all of these use cases, Alma does automatic enrichment, linked data enrichment of the graphic records, and so those subfields, automatic subfield 0 URIs, or once you've manually cataloged, can be used in these different views. And so if we look on the top, we've got the JSON LD, which I see as a typo, which we'll fix, of course. JSON LD has an API and also the ability to view the enriched URIs in Alma. RDA RDF has an API endpoint, as well as data can be published, and that's brand new. And BIBFRAME also has an API endpoint, can be published, and also can be shown in Alma. So this is the state of affairs as of the December release, which is of Alma, which is coming out this weekend. I think maybe there's 1 or 2 fixes that are going out in the December hotfix. So in another week or so, you should be able to take a look and view all of these features inside of Alma. We'll talk about things that are coming down the road, of course, based on feedback. There'll be fixes coming out in January and February, but this is kind of the baseline for support in Alma as of another week from now. Okay, so I wanted to show you now a few of the features that have been released more recently. Some of them we have seen slides for, but never seen samples for. So here I'll mention, and now from this point on, all of these slides that I'll show you, I'll actually be showing you in a live demo after we go through some of these slides, so you can see these in action. So we've had for several months now, for some time now, RDA RDF APIs available, and there are 2 APIs. There's a manifestation API and there is a work API. So the manifestation API is the equivalent of an Alma bibliographic record, and that includes the work fields, a link to, and then a link to the manifestations that are related to that work, and then expression manifestation, and also item barcodes that are available for that particular bibliographic record. And we also have a work endpoint, a work URL that can be grouped. Okay, if we have the Ferber grouping on for that particular institution. And then this API provides all the work fields and the list of all the manifestations that are related to that work. And so when I go to the demo part, we will see sample records both for the work and the manifestation API. As I said, I'll be making these slides available so you'll have the links to those sample records. And in addition, of course, in the documentation on the developer network that I showed you earlier, there are also links to sample records. You can take a look there. And of course, I'll show you how to operate these in your own instance of Alma. If you have an Alma instance, you can see it on your data. So in the Alma publishing platform, you can create a publishing profile. And that publishing profile can include linked data enrichment. So that same enrichment we talked about, or the automatic adding of subfield zeros of URIs, those can be turned on via data enrichment in publishing. So you can define a set of records you wish to publish. And you can say, you know, when you run this publishing, I want you to add those subfield zeros. And then, of course, any of the subfield zeros that are manually cataloged will go out as well. And what's nice here, which is now also new, is the ability to publish both in RDA, RDF, and in BIBFRAME as output formats. So the first thing you want to do is check off your linked data enrichment. And then under the output format box, you can select now both, or either BIBFRAME or RDA, RDF, which is great. And so you can take the same output, which is provided by the URIs. You can export those to files, and then harvest them or use them in various other systems. So that we'll take a look at in Alma as well in publishing. And I mentioned BIBFRAME as a target format, which is brand new, of course. And the way that works is that it uses the MARC to BIBFRAME 2 converter from the Library of Congress. I mentioned that earlier in the slides. And so it performed the linked data enrichment to add those subfield zeros. So if we look here at this kind of mini flow chart at the bottom, we see the process of publishing records in BIBFRAME goes something like this. We retrieve the records from the set which is specified in the publishing profile. For each bibliographic record, we enrich those records with linked data links, the enrichment we talked about earlier in the slide deck. Then we perform the Library of Congress BIBFRAME crosswalk to take that MARC record and turn it into a BIBFRAME record. And then we put those BIBFRAME records into a file and publish those files. Okay, so that's how we have integrated the BIBFRAME crosswalk into our publishing process. And we are updating the BIBFRAME crosswalk as changes are made. So I think we've set about once a quarter, about once every 3 months, to take the latest version of the converter and to integrate that into Alma. Of course, those of you who are following that GitHub repository know that it's a work in progress. We have representatives of the Library of Congress on the BIBFRAME as well, so there's a very fruitful conversation and cooperation happening there. And really, with the release of BIBFRAME publishing and the API, which I'll talk about in a moment, in Alma, it makes available in BIBFRAME a huge number of bibliographic records. So really, any customer today who is in Alma, their entire repository can be exposed either via publishing or via APIs as BIBFRAME. So it's really exciting for us. It's a great use of the great work Library of Congress has done on the converter. And so we're looking forward to the comments we've already received and to putting in any fixes to make it a fully proper and valid BIBFRAME available from within Alma. So that is very exciting. I mentioned the API, so we also have available now a BIBFRAME API and endpoint, so similar to the RDA, RDF endpoint that we mentioned a moment ago. There are 2 APIs, and the process is the same. So here from the publishing side, we see this process where we get the record from the set, we enrich it with the linked data links, we do the crosswalk, and then publish it. To the API, we retrieve the record, we enrich it with the subfield zeros, automatic enrichment, we run the crosswalk, and that crosswalk applies equally to automatically added subfield zeros or manually added subfield zeros, and then we make the resulting record available. And so we have 2 APIs here. There's an instance and a work record. So the instance is similar to RDA, RDF. The instance is the equivalent of the bibliographic level inside of Alma. And it has a well-known format for the URI. And then that instance record will also return a link to the work URI. And you can call or request the work URI, which returns back the work-related fields. And I'll mention, because I know there was some discussion on the Basecamp, the published URIs that refer back to the record itself, those will now resolve to these endpoints, which is great. So the published data will include URIs for the record itself, for the work and for the instance, and the URIs that are there will actually refer back to these endpoints. Okay, and finally, from the slide perspective, at least, before we actually go in and see some of these features in action, we have the BIBFRAME record view. So we see here, we have in the record view the normal mark tab, and now there's a new tab available for the BIBFRAME view. And again, it's the same process that we saw before. The record is enriched with subfield zeros, URIs. It's run through the converter and then displayed here so that the records are not only available via API and via publishing, but also a BIBFRAME view within Alma itself. So I hope that if we go back to that table that I showed a few minutes ago, which kind of laid out all the different types of linked data output and the different places that output is available in Alma, I hope that these slides have shown or given you an idea of how that actually looks in the system. But instead of just the picture, well, actually, if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then a demo is worth 1,000 pictures. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of these features actually inside of Alma. And of course, it's always brave to do a live demo while you're on the Google Hangout, but we'll try it and see where it goes. So I want to mention a few things. First of all, in order to make the APIs available, all the API endpoints that we mentioned, there is an integration profile available. And that's once you turn that on, then everything, all of the APIs, both the RDA, RDF work and manifestation, and the BIBFRAME work and instance APIs are then available. So to manage that, you go into administration, you search for an integration, your integration profiles. You look for one that's linked data. If you go ahead and click on that linked data profile, we'll see that I have an active button. Okay, an active button, once I turn that on, then these URIs are available. The alternative context is for the JSON LD. If you want to redirect some of those terms we use in the JSON LD to an alternative context, you can put in a URL there, and then that's used in the JSON LD. So that's just to know if you want to make sure that your APIs, if these endpoints are, if you want to make them available, you can go in and turn on the linked data integration profile. And now let's go ahead back to Alma. So we have here a few examples. I mentioned we have the RDA, RDF APIs. So I can go ahead and take an example of that. So our manifestation API is available. And you see that the URL is open.exlibrisgroup.com. So these are open APIs. They do not require an API key. Once you turn on that linked data integration profile, this was the same thing, of course, for the JSON LD API, so that hasn't changed. It's just now we have 4 new APIs available, 2 for RDA, RDF, and 2 for BIBFRAME. So here is a manifestation API. We see here we've got work, expression, and manifestation fields. Okay, and then we also have just the work API itself. So we can go ahead and take a look at that as well. And here we see just the work data for that field. Okay, we see here that there are subject URIs that are linking to Library of Congress, for example. And so those are available here, as well as there should be some names. Yes, creators down here. So we have 2 name URIs as well. And those URIs are automatically generated and provided in the enrichment phase, as we talked about. Okay. And we see here, for example, within the work API, we have a link back to the manifestation API. And from the manifestation API, we have a link to the work API. So those 2 endpoints the RDA, RDF, XML, which is produced, they link to each other. Okay, so let's take a look here. I'm now in my internal, my QA environment, just because these are some features that are coming out in the December release, and we did this this update a tad earlier to show it in production. But that's fine. We'll show it here in this instance. Just if you go right now to see it, you won't see exactly this. We'll wait a few days, and it'll be in your environment as well. So on the publishing side, let's go ahead into publishing profiles, and let's take a look at how I would both turn on a linked data enrichment and also how I could create a new publishing profile. So let's just go ahead into this existing publishing profile for a moment, and let's click on the data enrichment tab. Okay, and we see here that under bibliographic normalization, I have a checkbox for linked data enrichment. So once I check that, that's what adds all the subfield zeros, all the automatic authority-based enrichments. You want to make sure that you turn that on. And then let me go back here and let me just create or start to add a new profile, add a general profile. And we see that in addition to all of the profile name and the publishing parameters and the set, we see that there is an output format, which we see that there's MARC and Dublin Core. And in the bottom, we have two additional output formats. So one of them is BIBFRAME, and one of them is RDA, RDF. Okay, so you can now choose either one of those formats, and then the files which are produced will have the same BIBFRAME or RDA, RDF XML that we just saw via the API. Those will be available in the files. So, you know, you would, just like any publishing profile, you would go and create an FTP location. You would specify which FTP you're going to use. And so here I just ran this before. We see we have a tar GZ of that's prefaced by BIBFRAME, okay, because that's the preface that I gave it here in the publishing profile. And so if we open up that file, we see that it is indeed an RDF file, which has a work instance for all of the records inside of the set. So a relatively small set, had only a few records. And then if we go down into the work, we'll see it's the same work. Actually, we haven't seen this BIBFRAME yet, but it'll be the same XML, which is available in the endpoint, in the view in Alma. It's available here in these files. So you can publish either RDA or you can publish BIBFRAME, and both of those are available now as output formats. Okay, let me move over now and go back to my browser, and let me show some additional URIs. So we have the BIBFRAME API, and I'm running this in my test environment also. So we have the BIBFRAME API. This is for an instance. Okay, so again, we are now running the LD enrichment. We're running the LC converter from MARC to BIBFRAME. And here we have BIBFRAME coming out of this well-known URL. So you ignore the first part. The first part of this URL will be similar to what we're seeing here, this open URL. It'll be similar for BIBFRAME, and it'll say BIBFRAME entity instance, and then the bibliographic ID, and excuse me. And here we have all of the work fields. So this is the work fields and the instance field because we're on the instance level. Okay. And as I mentioned during the slides, the URIs that we actually have here in the work and instance tags are actually URIs to those endpoints. So now, whether you get the information via publishing or via view in Alma or via these APIs, all those URIs will connect to each other, which is great. That kind of closes that circle. And so I'll also click here on the work URI as well, the BIBFRAME work URI. And again, it's retrieving the record, adding the subfield zeros, automatic enrichment, running the entire enriched record through the LC converter, and displaying the result, which in this case is just the work section. And so now again, we've got 4 tabs, 4 URIs, 4 different APIs, RDA, RDF, work and instance, and work and manifestation, and BIBFRAME work and instance. And finally, let's go back to Alma, and we can see a little bit of the way that we make these records available in Alma. So we saw in publishing, we saw via URIs, APIs, and so let's now go in Alma and see how we can actually expose some of this information to our librarians and to our staff as well. So if we just search for any record here in Alma, we can take a look at the search results. We can find a record which looks like it might be relevant for us. Let's take a look here. So I can go ahead and click on the 3 dots on the more actions in my staff search results, and I can click on linked data. This is not something new, but this is something that we haven't shown yet in one of these demos. And here I have a link, or here I have all of the enriched URIs that we add automatically. And also here's a link to the JSON LD API, which we didn't see today, but we've seen in the past, which is another endpoint which is available. So again, from any record inside the staff search, you can go ahead and click on linked data. And once you do that, you get a list of the automatically enriched URIs with a link to the JSON LD record as well. Okay. And then once you go ahead and click on an actual record, you can go ahead and click on the record. You get the short view of the record. Okay, that's in Mark. And now, as I mentioned, you have this additional BIBFRAME tab, and this is available when you click on any brief record or any quick view record inside of Alma or record view. And you have here, again, that same XML, the same BIBFRAME, which is produced. And again, it's the same process. We take the record, we enrich it with the automatically created URIs, run it through the LC converter, and display that here. Where you can then use this in other tools. It's a tool to help get more familiar with BIBFRAME, but it's a great way of exposing some of these records without having to publish them or go to a separate URI. Okay, so that was a bit of a whirlwind, but just to kind of recap, we saw the integration profile and how to configure it to make sure that all of the APIs are active. We saw 4 APIs, the RDA, RDF, manifestation and work API, and the work and instance APIs for BIBFRAME. We saw in publishing how we can add linked data enrichment to publishing and also specify output format of BIBFRAME or RDA, RDF. And we saw inside of Alma, we saw linked data links and JSON LD link in the staff search and a BIBFRAME record view as well. So if we just go back briefly to our slide deck, if we go all the way back to the beginning of the deck where you had a table, and we can take a look at what we saw today. So we saw on the JSON LD, we saw view in Alma, we saw the RDA, RDF API in publishing, and we saw the BIBFRAME API publishing and view in Alma. So we really kind of got the entire overview of linked data features that are available today in Alma. And if we take a moment to look ahead, this is the short-term roadmap slide that we presented during our last update, I think it was last summer. And so the first one representing marked bibliographic records in BIBFRAME via publishing view and API. So that was delivered. We just saw that now. Support publishing for linked data consumer applications in RDA and RDF. That was delivered, and we saw that. And the last item on the short-term roadmap is some incremental enhancements to existing APIs. We still have that on our list of working on that in the January and February releases. And that's mostly around some updates to JSON LD API, some fixes there. And then, of course, some feedback that we've gotten already about the BIBFRAME features that folks have seen already since November. So we're going to get some of those fixes and incremental enhancements into the upcoming releases as well. And if we look out a little bit further, into next year, second half of next year, perhaps, we're looking to be able to provide linked data endpoints or searching of linked data endpoints within the metadata editor. So something along the lines of being able to be on a field inside of Alma in the MD editor to click on some kind of keystroke and then just search for that value against some linked data endpoint, and then to be able to select the record or one of the records that's returned, and then add an appropriate URI to the subfield 0 of that particular field. So really kind of a way to just help out the manual cataloging scenario. So in areas or in scenarios where we cannot automatically add a URI, it's not linked to an authority, or whatever the case may be, so this kind of helps to enable manual cataloging scenarios. In addition, and also since our community zone authorities are MARC-based, this is a way to be able to link to non-MARC-based schemas or vocabularies. So the example here in this screenshot is really a mock-up is, for example, from GeoNames. So you'd be able to search for a particular field in the 752, for example, and then based on the results coming back from GeoNames, you can select a relevant record, and then we go ahead and add in a subfield 0 for the selected record into the bibliographic record. So that's the midterm roadmap. And then if we're looking further out, long term, we have on our roadmap highlights the ability to, or proof of concept of supporting native cataloging in BIBFRAME, and then also perhaps the ability to import records into Alma, import BIBFRAME records into Alma. So that's kind of looking further afield. Okay, but definitely there is plenty to work with even today. And I really think that at this point, the end of this year is really a milestone in terms of the exposure of records in BIBFRAME, the ability to publish records in RDA, RDF, really kind of a decent feature set around linked data, nice feature set around linked data that can serve as the basis for continued development there. So that was very much Alma based, and I'll just spend a few minutes now talking about Primo. Not much has changed from the point of view of what we have to share with you, but I want to just emphasize some of the relevant points around Primo and around discovery. So first of all, on the discovery scenarios, we want to be able to expose linked data and also consume linked data. So it's really, there are workflows or use cases from both sides in the discovery. Again, being able to expose linked data that is being published from Alma, say, and then also being able to consume linked data to enrich the discovery experience. And so right now, there's been some baby steps there around Primo, some concrete steps in Primo, and that's where we're doing a lot of our exploration. And then once we kind of get a better feel for use cases, we'll be adding functionality to Summon as well. And so if we're looking at what some of the stuff that we've done, some of the things we've done during 2016 and 2017, there's been a discussion, a fruitful discussion with the community about what it means to enable linked data scenarios. And from a discovery perspective, we have loaded URIs that are either generated or manually cataloged and published from Alma into the PNX records. And now it's available in the PNX and can be used for various use cases inside of Primo. There was a practical kind of proof of concept demo scenario, which we talked about during our last update, of how to use and consume linked data functionality in the new Primo UI. And then that code has been updated recently and shared so that you're welcome to. We've actually seen some feedback already to play with that component using the Open Discovery Framework and the UI customization framework. And if you look at where we're going on the Primo on the discovery side, so the next focus is about exposing library collections and linked data to allow them to be consumed and more discoverable. And to that end, we have on the Primo roadmap exposing records as schema.org, embedded schema.org, that they can be consumed by search engines and made searchable. Okay, so that's material that we've shared with you before, just kind of with an update as to the latest happenings, including the updates to the linked data directive, which has been kind of updated and published in GitHub, which I can add as a link on the slide before I publish it, so you can go directly there as well. So I will add that to the slides. And then finally, if we're looking forward, I mentioned, when I opened up the discussion, I mentioned that we're really looking to the special interest working group to help us to gather feedback on the features we've done so far, to help us when it comes to defining the roadmap around linked data as we explore this together with you. And so, we definitely encourage you, and I'm sure Laura will say the same thing, to get involved with the linked data special interest working group, and to allow them really to gather all of the various feedback, and then kind of multiply your voices together and provide input to the roadmap. Really is one of the, especially in an emerging area like linked data, we really look to customers via the working group to provide us with feedback. So that we know the direction, where we can add value to you in your explorations and beginning work with linked data features. So thank you for the opportunity to present and to demo what we've been working on. I really hope that those of you who are Alma customers will in the next have already seen some of the features that we've added, over the next week or two. Or immediately after the holidays, we'll go in and start to play with them and take them for a drive, and then start to give us feedback on the work that we've done so far. So I will turn it back over to Laura, who wants to say some words about the Special Interest Working Group, and then we can open it up. We'll have a little bit of time for questions as well.
Thank you so much, Josh. This is very helpful. And Mehmet, can I ask you to bring up the slide that I shared with you, the information about the SIWG? Or I can get it and I can share my screen if you want to do it that way. There it is. Okay, great. So this is just a little bit of information about, it's actually, we're dropping the special interest part, and they're all going to be called working groups. But this is the LOD working group for IGeLU and Luna. And perhaps the best way to learn about us is to Google us. IGeLU Linked Open Data should get you to our page on the IGeLU website. We have a mailing list if you're not on it. You can sign up there. You can email me, liblna@emory.edu. We have a Slack channel. We have various documents that we're making publicly available. And we have a development dashboard now. And this is the new feature I wanted to talk about. Could you click on that development dashboard link, please, Mehmet? And this just gives you an idea of what it looks like. You scroll down a little bit. Gosh, it's big. Okay, so what we're doing is trying to keep up with all the features that Josh has just talked about, their status, and any issues that may have arisen about them, and where the documentation is, because we found it really challenging between the Alma and Primo documentation and the developers' documentation and sometimes GitHub sites, etc. Keep straight where the information was. So we thought maybe you out there would have that same problem. So this is new, and I think we just sent an email to our mailing list highlighting it. And we would love to have you get involved in telling us about issues that you find or documentation that you may have uncovered that we hadn't realized was out there, so that we can try to keep it up to date. So there's a lot going on right now, and we will try best to get as many people who want to be involved as possible in pointing to roadmap directions, testing, finding new use cases. We're also actively soliciting for show and tells of people who have worked with linked data or perhaps have tried out some of these features. We're planning a full program at Aluna. And I'm hoping to have a little bit of a hackathon at Developers Day using these APIs. So I would encourage you to get in touch with me, or to go ahead and put in a request for lightning talk or a full presentation if you experimentation. And that's about all I want to say. I want to get to, we've got over 20 questions now. So I don't know if we can hit Josh with them all, but I'm going to jump over there and start asking. So are there any problems with URIs and subfield 0 interfering with other uses of subfield 0, such as for authority control, or linking in Alma, or linking cross-reference data for browse feature in Primo?
Okay, so that's a good question. So subfield 0 is repeatable, and we've done work to differentiate between subfield zeros that begin with HTTP or HTTPS, and subfield zeros that are just ID for linking-based purposes, for example, to authorities. And many of you know that the original or the previous recommendation of the Library of Congress was to prefix URI subfield zeros with URI, the keyword URI in parentheses. And since then, that recommendation has been changed. And so we now also just differentiate between IDs and URIs based on the prefix of HTTP. And then in Primo and the PNX, it's actually stored in a field also marked as a URI, and it is also differentiated in the same way via HTTP. And so, to the best of my knowledge, there should not be any interference between URIs and subfield zeros and other uses of subfield 0.
Okay. So there seem to be a number of questions about the work URI that's being generated for both BIBFRAME and RDF publishing, and that's based on, as I understand it, sort of a similar algorithm for clustering that is used for the Ferber clustering in Primo. Are there any problems with URIs in subfield 0? Oh, no, I'm sorry, read that one. On the get instance, a URI to work is also available. Which work URI generated by Alma or other data store? Okay. So, as I understand it, Alma is generating a work URI. Is that right?
Correct. So we can enable the Ferber clustering, as you mentioned, for those who are interested, and then we execute a similar algorithm as is done for discovery dedupe for Ferber clustering, and then we generate a work URI, and that's to group several instances or manifestations, depending if you're BIBFRAME or RDA, together. And of course, there is talk of global work URIs or generic work URIs, and that is a discussion that's not limited to Ex Libris or to Alma or to Primo. So right now, this is an option. If you're not interested in that grouping, then the default behavior is to just have one work per instance or per manifestation, which is one one work per bibliographic record. And if you are interested in the grouping, then you can make a request to support for us to turn on that grouping, and it'll apply to the work records produced. But they are produced by Alma. Of course, if there is looking down the road, if there's further developments or an agreed upon global work database, then we can make changes accordingly.
Okay, so just a little clarification there. I'm gathering that when you turn on these this clustering and generation of work URIs in Alma, they're stable. So, they don't change.
Correct.
That relationship between your
instance
and the work URI, it's stored in there.
Correct.
As someone further down, I believe, is asking, would we be able to modify the relationships between instances or bibliographic records and work URIs in Alma?
So
right now
it's either one-to-one, or it's based on the algorithm that we can do. Of course, for those of you who are advanced users, and if there is a scenario that interests you, you can do the one-to-one and then harvest those records and manipulate them as you'd like. But in terms of out of the box, that's what we support: one-to-one or grouped. Okay.
So, but there is interest in being able to modify those relationships, and I'm understanding that there's don't ask me for the tag number right now, but there's a tag that will be added to MARC where you'll be able to store a work identifier that is associated with a record. So that opens up some possibilities as well. Someone's asking, in the process of publishing BIBFRAME, the second step, enrich with linked data link, will library be able to customize the data store for the link, which takes place when the source data already has a subfield 0 or 1 present?
Okay, so I mentioned the automatic enrichment. So that automatic enrichment is mostly based on authority control. And so we're able to add, and there was actually a question, there were some vocabularies that were controlled in the community zone, which actually did not get automatically enriched in Alma. Minor enhancements that I mentioned earlier in the roadmap, so that we're going to be adding in the coming months, so that within the next couple of months, any records which are authorized based on community zone authorities will have a link automatically enriched. And so that's done automatically based on that link to the community zone. If the record if the source record already has a subfield 0, then that just will pass through to the BIBFRAME converter, and we'll go through the same transformation as if we added it. And we also do some checking there. So if the URI that we're about to add automatically is already there, we don't add it again. So so that's what happens if the source data already has a subfield 0 or subfield 1.
And would I be able to choose which vocabulary enrichments I want and which I don't care about, or is it an all or nothing kind of enrichment?
Right. So today, once you turn on the linked data enrichment, either by calling URIs or by doing it in publishing. So then we go and do as much as we can for you. We add as many URIs as we can based on linked authorities in that bibliographic record.
Okay. Okay. So are you saying that the records won't be enriched with URIs without having an API or a publishing profile?
Right. So that enrichment, which we've talked about, the automatic enrichment, is not persistent in the record. That's the difference between manually cataloged subfield zeros or subfield ones and automatic enrichment. The automatic enrichment is done only as a part of those entry points that we mentioned in that table with those green check marks. So only when you go to an API or publish records or view the record in Alma, we do on-the-fly enrichment. We add those subfield zeros and then transform the record to RDA, RDF, or to BIBFRAME. So the records themselves are not changed; they're not persistent, as opposed to manually cataloged subfield zeros or subfield ones, and that's actually in the record itself, and that is persistent. So if you export the record, you'll see, or view the record in the metadata editor, for example, you'll see those subfield zeros there. So automatic enrichment is not persistent. Manual cataloging is persistent.
Okay. Excuse me, I have a little technical problem. I'll be right back with you. Need to make sure that the computer does not run out. Okay, so there's a question. Can you share the API example links that look like they're linked in your slides, but they're not clickable because it's YouTube? Thanks.
Sure, we will go ahead and publish, or I'll provide these slides with the clickable links.
Okay, good. Okay, and I think that example links using API for RDA, RDF, I'm not sure about BIBFRAME yet, but in the documentation on the developers network, there's some information.
Correct. They're also available there as well.
Okay.
I think we have time for one or two more questions if you have them.
There's a predicate for creator. I think it said RDAW creator. Please confirm in one of your examples. This is from BIBFRAME, and I don't believe that's correct predicate for author. It is agent, URI string, RDA AAP501P954, etc. Is author of.
Happy to take that feedback in the Basecamp, or
I could kind of in Basecamp. There's a and anyone is welcome to join the Basecamp also, and email me and I'll put you on if you're not already in there. That we did discover that there are some oddities, even though Ex Libris believed that they had the most up-to-date version of the BIBFRAME converter, there were some aspects of it that were out of date. So that's one of the updates that will be coming, I guess, with December Alma update. I don't know when the plan is to resolve that, because we're still talking through what the differences are. Will catalogers be able to deliberately assert relationships between a particular work URI and particular manifestations, and or between work URIs? Okay, I think we covered that. It doesn't sound like right now, but that might be something that we talk about being able to add to the roadmap in the future. Any plans to make RDA, RDF also viewable in Alma cataloging interface, along with the JSON LD and the BIBFRAME?
That's a good question. So we don't have plans for that now. But again, if it's something that receives enough interest by the working group, something we can definitely consider.
Yeah. There's somebody who's interested in different serializations, such as Turtle of RDF tab. So rather than the XML. So I don't know, you know, what will be most satisfying to the community.
I think that's. I mean, I want to be respectful of people's time and finish up here. This will be the last question, but I think that, that's an interesting point. You know, there are some RDF XML to other serialization converters out there on the web, and so, you know, once you're given that XML, you should be able to represent that in other serializations if desired.
Okay. Oh, there's a lot of more questions that come in. So we'll make our promise that we will get to these questions and get Josh to answer as many as he can. And we will publish updates to the question answer, to the linked open data working group email list. So stay tuned. And if you're not on our list, please email me and I will add you. Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Mehmet.
My pleasure.